Hello everybody, and welcome to this episode of CFO 4.0. And it is one of I think this is becoming a bit of a Christmas tradition. So, for those of you that are long time listeners, you may remember we did a very special podcast on with Sarah Watson from the Make a Wish Foundation, all about both how they are supporting others through their Christmases, and also talking about the joys of finance and transformation and the impact that finance can truly have on an organization. So I'm very excited to welcome Sarah back. And for those that haven't listened to that previous podcast, perhaps they've joined us this year, and well, you're in for a treat. So thank you so much for joining me today, Sarah. And yeah, tell us a little bit about Make a Wish.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you for having me back. And oh my goodness me, that year has gone so quickly, hasn't it? For those of you who don't know about us, so Make a Wish UK, we grant wishes for critically ill children in the UK. And this time of year, that's incredibly important as we're thinking about special memories and time with our families. And I'm going to start by sharing our Christmas wish story with you, which is that for many, the festive season serves as a time for families to form everlasting and joyous memories. But after being given a short prognosis, 4-year-old Leo's family knew that the opportunity to create Christmas time memories would sadly not come around again. So an early Christmas filled with laughter, love, and of course presents was the perfect wish for little Leo. At just 5 weeks old, Leo suffered a cardiac arrest, leaving him with brain damage, the consequences of which impacted him throughout his life. The feeling was indescribable, said Mum. The cardiac arrest came on suddenly, altering the course of not just Leo's life, but the whole family's lives too. Your whole world flips upside down. We went from being average people to 24-hour carers overnight. For the family, who seized every opportunity they could to make memories with Leo, the wish came at a perfect time. We loved making memories as a family. I'm so glad we did. As Mum told us, we wanted to have a Christmas before Christmas. We knew it would be his last. Originally, the family had planned to go to West Midlands Safari Park, but a decline in Leo's health saw him unable to visit the park. So when the opportunity came to have an early Christmas where Leo would be surrounded by his family, engulfed in love and drowning in presents delivered to him by Santa himself, Mum knew it would be the right thing to do. And just weeks after his wish, Leo sadly passed away. For Mum, Leo's wish created ever-present memories of her son just days before he passed, ones that wouldn't exist without the power of a Christmas time wish. Kids like Leo have a short time on this earth, said Mum, so making memories is so special. Make a Wish created that magical Christmas for us. There aren't enough thank yous. We couldn't be more grateful. So this Christmas, as you spend time with your family making memories, please consider donating to us so we can grant more wishes that create special memories for children and their loved ones.
Oh, that's such a sad story, Sarah. I don't know how you can, how well you read that given the scenario. So, tell us a little bit about how organisations can support Make a Wish in this
Mm.
time. What sort of ways can they help raise money for you?
So one of the things we've recognised is that wishes are incredibly unique. They're as unique as every single child. So Hannah, I think we talked about this before, thinking about what you would wish for, the thing that's special about you. It's the same for every child. So when we know what a wish requires, we can fulfill that in two ways. We can find funding for that, but often wishes are granted through community, through networks of support. If you want to be a Lego designer, if you want to, I don't know, meet someone special, that's probably not something that can be bought for you. So that those kind of elements can actually be gifted to us. So one of the changes we've made this year, which we're incredibly proud of, is we've embedded a stock management system which allows the wish to ask for what it needs. So it can ask for goods and services as well as us being able to provide those with cash. And that really broadens the reach and allows us to have incredibly creative communities come together to just make it just so special.
And is there a way that businesses or individuals can access like the wish list of things that you guys need to make these amazing wishes come true?
Yeah, they're all on our website. So makeawish.org.uk, you can see how you donate with cash, how you donate with gifts in kind, and you can also volunteer through there as well. So all of our activities are in one place to make it really easy to find.
And that's it's an incredible thing what you guys do. And I've always said that Make-A-Wish is one of my very special charities that I love to support. But actually, you in finance, you've done a lot of work over the years to try and make sure that you are geared up to support the organization. And it's not just about saving money on time spent in finance, but it's also about how can finance support that transformation. So we've got loads of things to talk about today, and keen to get your view on the next year and what that brings. But one of the challenges, I think, especially in this current climate when things are rapidly changing, where there's budgetary constraints, how do you justify the need to invest in transformation and the need to drive things forwards?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, and certainly from a not-for-profit perspective, is really hard because anything that we're requesting from an infrastructure perspective isn't going to deliver wishes. So that's a challenge. I think there's two parts to this. The first is the investment is needed because something will change. So, what is the thing that you want to do that's going to materially make a difference? For us, this is around thinking about reach. We don't reach the children that we need to. We know there are 63,000 children in the UK who could be eligible for a wish today. And last year, we're really proud. We granted the most wishes ever, but that was 1,200. So, that gap is still quite immense. So, once we've worked out what it is we need to do, we can think about how we fund it. So some of it is working out what you want to do and then looking at things like pro bono partnerships. So we partner a lot with JP Morgan's Force for Good program because they can provide tech expertise without us having to actually put any cash behind that. And we've obviously got an internal team, but it allows us to partner in quite a different way. And then from a finance perspective, what's really interesting, we touched on gifts in kind. Well, how do you value gifts of something that arguably don't have, they're all intangible. So, what do you do with that? And from a charity's perspective, our trustees have a responsibility to say, actually, we've maximized the return on all of those things. So, we do have to be able to demonstrate the change to model that gifts in kind are bringing in, the kind of change then to infrastructure that allows us to ask for the gifts in kind that we're looking for alongside cash, demonstrate the outputs that change and the impact that's delivered from that, because that then it puts this sort of investment case, if you like, to it, which might not be cash, but it might be, why should we do this over something else at this point in time?
So thinking more strategically about the value of the transformation piece that you're doing and how it's going to impact the wider organization, because there is a tendency for us to talk about ROI, and there's always a notional view that ROI involves cold hard cash and it should be hours served, and calculating the ROI that way. But actually, what you're saying there is that there's a bigger picture that we need to understand, that it's all about how does finance support the wider organization to achieve its goals or change its business model and do something different, which I think is amazing.
Definitely. And I think also at the moment, there's a lot of volatility, isn't there, cash wise? So businesses that are looking to treasury management, how much predictability is there? How much returns are they getting? Can they borrow against investment portfolios? Do they need to draw that down? So I think how you fund things is incredibly important, and making sure that you've got all of your stakeholders with you, that your financial narrative is clear and it maps back to your strategy. So everybody's able to explain it. It's not misunderstood, because sometimes investments, they can be misunderstood, can't they, and misconstrued as to what they're going to do, and that's incredibly challenging. The other thing I'd say with that is we've seen so much change in what the finance team are doing and how they're supported by other parts of the organization. So we've put a lot of time into our data, real-time data, and we have a data team and we have a data scientist looking at that. So some of those traditional finance kind of business partner reporting, really understanding who has the skill set to support that and take those decisions and advise is equally important. As things change, we have to upskill as a finance team.
Absolutely. And I think There's a really interesting point there about the change that finance has gone through, let's say, in this last 12 months, and also where it's going in the next 12 months. And that was one of the key topics that I'd love to pick your
Mm.
brains on. What's your ambition for finance in the next sort of 12 to 18 months? You know, how are you looking at your finance team and setting yourselves up for success?
I think it's really understanding the skill set that finance have that nobody else in the organization have. What is the thing that only they can do that can't be automated? Because that's the other side to this, isn't it? Is also thinking about how AI, how machine learning, how those kind of repetitive tasks can be taken out of what we're doing. So we've really thought about, well, it's the people interactions for us. You know, we're an organization that is very much heart led and focused on wishes. But within that, there has to be the commercial reality of what can we afford to do, because we don't ever want to disappoint a child or their family. And so we have to think about the messaging that we use to make sure that it isn't, we're not talking about profits, we're talking about impactful wishes. And so for our finance team, it's really understanding the difference that they make in our ability to grant wishes by putting together much longer range forecasts over 3 years that look at different ways of granting wishes, whether that's cash centrally, whether that's working with corporate partners, whether that's thinking about those gifting kind donations. And then how do you blend that and bring that all together? Because that's actually quite a challenge, Hannah. Trying to put all that together is quite a skill.
I can only imagine, and I think, and what I love is that you're talking about the vision that you have for finance in terms of how finance can impact the organization's ability to deliver wishes, and connect. I guess also helping inspire and connect the dots for those individuals. So you talked a little bit about skills. How do you see the skill set in finance changing over the next 12 months?
So I think the core underpinning legislative function will always be there. We adhere to certain accounting standards. We have to work within an audited and a regulated environment. So it depends on what regulations you might be subject to. So one of the changes for us this year is we launched a lottery product for fundraising, and that meant that we had to go through more regulation to make sure we were completely compliant in the way that we're carrying out our activities. So there are changes in training and upskilling constantly. We're also looking at digital assets and cryptocurrency and how we make that safe and secure, both for the charities perspective and for donors. And so we've had to upskill in that area, and we've had lots of support to be able to do that. Beyond that, I think it's digital. What digital tools can help you to do what you need to do, making sure that you've got flexibility, you're making sure that everybody has the data that they need, and that the interpretation is correct. Because I think that skill set of being able to identify, what are your real results at a point in time, and what does that mean for your cash flow? Because ultimately, cash is unpredictable, and keeping an eye on that at all times for charities is just incredibly important, particularly with the volatility that we're seeing globally at the moment.
And how has the volatility that we're seeing at the moment impacted how, apart from obviously doing more reporting, has it changed how you report, as in the frequency of reporting, the depth of reporting? What are you doing differently?
Yeah, so we've moved away from a traditional annual fixed plan and budget that just stays as it was and we report back to, because we know that that isn't the world that we live in. We need to be in a quarterly cycle that allows us to constantly adjust and change. So we've really got that kind of pipeline link through from the resources coming in to the wishes that we're able to grant and keep our families informed. And that also goes both ways, because remember, we're not dealing with, it's not a product, these are children and families in their lives, and they might have schools, they might have exams, they could have hospital appointments, they may be at points where their condition deteriorates and we need to speed up where they are in the wish journey. So we have to manage all of that, and that's only possible with lots of reporting and that kind of agility and flexibility.
And if we go back to where we started our conversation about justifying, I think that's a really important piece, isn't it? Is that reporting is not just about, it's not just about how long it takes you to get reporting out. It's about the value of having faster and more real time visibility. And as you said, that could impact whether you're able to meet a child's wish and whether you can respond fast enough to deliver on that as well.
Yeah, and if someone comes to us and says, we have this fantastic idea, we can offer you, I don't know what, 50 European holidays, could we utilize those? Because very often someone will come and expect a response very quickly. Well, if you don't have the data and the reporting about what you need, sometimes you can also acquire a whole lot of things that actually, lovely as they are, they're not useful to you in that moment. And that creates an admin burden. So the other part of this real-time reporting is you can say exactly what's needed at that point in time and make that matching process so much easier.
And so when you went into justifying is probably the wrong word, about deciding on whether this was the right move for you to invest in that infrastructure for reporting, was there just an acceptance of the value that real-time reporting would bring to the organization, or was there a lot of conversations about, is this something we should be spending money on?
Well, we knew we had a huge gap, that we didn't have the visibility of this 360 wish platform. So we couldn't necessarily tie the wish granting activities to the resources that were going to make that possible. So if you think we all work in an agile way, we're not in an office together. So we really had to think about how we had a CRM that connected all of that. And then beyond that, how did finance interact with the CRM, as well as doing what they needed to do with the finance system, but to make sure that both were really clear and that narrative was super clear, so that the teams were totally enabled and empowered to take a decision about, yes, we can move forward with a wish, because there would be nothing worse than reporting stopping a wish going ahead, particularly if the child didn't have time to wait for that.
Absolutely, and that must be so disappointing for both the child, but also the team that are working so hard to put that wish together as well. So, yeah, I can understand that. So there was always a view that you needed this. So you didn't necessarily have to work as hard to convince the stakeholders that that was going to add value. There was kind of an acceptance of that as you go in.
Well, also we had a legacy failing system, which tends to motivate people, because you don't actually have a choice, because it is falling over and it is no longer supported. So you're sort of hanging on for that right moment to make that switch, because I think this is the other thing. Historically, charities didn't have support in digital. They hadn't seen that as part of their delivery model. It wasn't a thing. So it was seen almost as a luxury. That's not an option anymore. You have to have digital skills and support. And so that change to narrative that says this isn't a thing that we can just reduce if funding, reduces. We have to choose, how are we going to deliver with the digital infrastructure? What support do we need? And how can tools really effectively help us across everything we do? So back to that impact, that's the difference. If you can, through the same CRM, be sending out surveys to wish families to check on what the impact of a wish was. You heard the words of mum when she talked about those memories created for Leo. That's what we want to capture, because that impact into evidence helps us to make sure that wishes are just the most incredible, magic, inclusive and inspiring experiences that they can be.
And that's an incredible goal. And we talked about was it 63,000 children that are potentially within the catchment. And I guess, what are you thinking about in finance to support that shift? How are you hoping that finance is going to support the organization to meet that goal?
So we've looked at the different things that we need to do. So in any organisation, there are different levers, aren't there, to be able to increase your reach. So for us, that could be additional fundraising. So when I talked about the lottery product, we are investing in some parts of fundraising, because we know over a 3 to 5 year timeline, that will give us a much more predictable income stream and allow us to reach many more children. But at the same time, in order to do that, we also have to make sure that we don't move too quickly with other investment projects, because we need to protect that investment so that we can reach those children. That means building these relationships and communities of gift in kind, because if we can partner with organisations who can support us with particular types of wishes, whether that's a gaming wish, because that's something that an organisation does as their day job, their business, and they can gift those items to us, that allows us to continue to meet need without having necessarily to pay for the content that the wish needs, need. So when I was saying about 50 European I wasn't joking with that. We would love that at the moment. We'd love a European travel partner, but it is those things where we know that there's very costly wishes that children would love to have, but actually we don't necessarily have the funds to be able to provide those at that particular level. And what's really important to say is this is about the why of a wish. So it's not about saying a wish has a particular value. It's about saying what impact does that have? Because actually, if as a child you want to meet a particular Disney princess, that's the thing you want to do. You don't necessarily want to go to Disneyland Paris to do it. You just want to meet the princess. So we've been able to do things like work with Disney on a Disney Wish in the UK, which doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. But children get to come and meet their favourite Disney heroes and heroines actually on site in the UK, which is just incredible. I've forgotten what you asked me now. I've just got carried away with wishes again, which is not helpful, is it?
Well, no, but I think it's one of the most exciting things I think about having you on the show, Sarah, is actually talking about the amazing impact that you and the team are having. But I guess, because this is technically a CFO podcast, we probably should ask some finance related
Yes, we
questions.
we should, Hannah. Come on, let's do it. We can do this.
We can. So when it comes to, I guess, finance, how are you supporting your team or developing your team to be able to help the organization reach those goals? What other things are you looking at in terms of finance? And I guess, what's your New Year's resolutions for finance? What things are you improving within the team?
So business partnering is always a really it's really high on our agenda always, and I think underpinned by kindness, because things don't always go right. You can predict what fundraised income's going to be, and you can have a very big event and it just doesn't deliver, and that's not through the hard work of the team involved. And I think finance has a really important part to play, to be that trusted advisor. They build confidence. They can really have those conversations at a point where somebody's they're sharing what are the results looking like, what are we really thinking, and helping people to have the right conversations even when they're difficult, because if we have the right conversations we can plan for them. It's only when we don't have those discussions about what it means we can't get that visibility and forward looking. So New Year's resolutions are much more focused on that longer term model. So it's much more about what's the performance over time than it is always going to go up and down a little bit, and we have to accept that. And then being really kind and supportive, because across our organization at any given time everybody is working with families and young children and young people facing into incredibly difficult times, and that is what we all do collectively, and how we support that and message that. So from a finance team's perspective, they can bring the rigor of that forecast that says, actually, on an annual basis we will go through an audit and we're going to show our donors how well run we are, that we are really trusted, we can be transparent with how we spend the funds that we're stewarding basically from a donor into a wish. We can show that we're innovative, we can show the diversification of fundraising, we can do all of the things that we need to do from a resilience point of view for finance. And we can also look at the different ways that we fund that. So when I was talking about those different models, it's very different modeling from having to raise cash to that time to be able to grant a wish utilizing that cash, versus the wish that starts without any cash requirement and actually wants to generate what it needs. So that kind of, how do you match resource to requirement, the finance team need to upskill in. And then making sure that they're holding that quarterly cycle, we're having those regular conversations, and we can put together a strategy and a plan that properly articulates what we need, because we know the need of children is just so great. So the more that we can unlock different sources of revenue, donations, partners to work with, the more that we can do. And I think that's the thing that gets everybody up in the morning, because they feel like they're making a difference, and it's just so powerful.
Absolutely. And I love that focus on business partnering, because it can be one of those intangible pieces that's hard to justify, but when you don't have it, or or you haven't got the skill set you need, you really notice the difference. And like you say, it's about avoiding the potholes that come along the way, and getting that visibility. So you did mention earlier on about obviously looking at the concept of crypto and those areas. Is that That's a really interesting piece. Are you finding that there's a lot of interest in donated through like non-regulated currencies within the sector?
So one of the challenges we found was that we've been engaging with the gaming community for some time now, and they're a really big supporter of ours, raising funds through streaming. And 2 years ago, at our Art of Wishes event, we had our first NFT that was going to be auctioned on the night, and that's where this conversation started, because we realised that someone who wanted to buy an NFT probably wanted to pay for it in digital currency, and that wasn't a thing that we had either sort of explored or come across. And what we discovered at the time was the reason for that is there's quite a lot of barriers to that. So, whilst the blockchain will check the provenance of the coins, what it doesn't do is connect those coins to a donor. So for us, that wasn't going to work, because we needed to, obviously, from a charity commission point of view, we have to report if we get anonymous donations. We also need to know where our money's coming from as well. So we've worked really closely with Zodia Custody and Markets to find a way that we could increase our know your customer checks and anti-money laundering checks through a different way of working, so that we do know who the donor is. We can make it safe and secure through a custodian who will receive that the currency from whatever that happens to be, and this is only the currencies that they have registered to support. So there are thousands out there. I think they've probably got about 20 that they can accept. That would be converted to fiat, and we would then draw that down as sterling. So we've worked through it in the same way that we would with any foreign currency, and thought really carefully about, we don't want to hold it for investment purposes. At the moment, there isn't a use case to be able to pay for things. I don't know whether that will change as it becomes more regulated and more confidence comes from that. But it is an income stream. And if you're a philanthropist in that space and passionate about digital assets, at the moment, we couldn't accept that. But as of next week, we can accept it. So that's an incredible thing. By the time this podcast goes out, we will have been about a month into accepting cryptocurrency. So I hope when I come back next year, I can tell you how many wishes we've been able to grant because of it.
I would love to understand that, because I think sometimes this new technology can be seen to be quite abstract and people don't quite understand the impact of it. But it isn't. It's so wonderful to hear not for profits figuring out how they can utilize this new technology and take it forwards. And there's been a lot of talk recently about AI and how that is impacting the world of finance. And what's your perspective on it? Is it something that you're assessing and looking at as an organization?
Yeah. So the other bit of my role is, I've got technology within my remit, and so very lucky to have had the opportunity to think a little bit about this. And the thing is, nobody is going to give us a badge for being clever with AI. What they're going to do is look at how many wishes we're granting. So for us, it's been evaluating, as we would do for any technology, where we started really. What is it you're trying to do? And are there ways that you can do that in a smarter, more effective way? And some of that is looking to existing tools that are coming online with different use cases, as software providers are embedding this within their platforms. And we've certainly seen that. Salesforce is our CRM, and we've certainly seen the opportunities that are coming through that. And we're working out how we do that. The key thing with AI, though, is you have to have really good data, because your data maps have to be able to explain what you want to do, and that relational piece. So that's where we're starting. We're making sure that we've got our data in good order, so that we can then choose how to take it forward. For us, we're never going to be designing AI products that we're building ourselves, but potentially that's where these pro bono partnerships come back in, because if we're partnering with organizations who can build, I don't know whether it's a chatbot or whatever it happens to be, that's a wonderful thing. And I see that more and more. I think one of the things with AI is that it is rules of logic. And if the rules of logic that algorithm is being built to is being only done for commercial products, we're not going to get a great result. So one of the things we need to do is the not-for-profit sector is try and get into those conversations and actually make sure that the way that things are being developed and the kind of outcomes actually are positive for society. They're not just about profit, because there's no reason why they can't be both.
Absolutely, and I think it's about balance, isn't it? That it has to, the the exciting thing about the technology that's being developed for the commercial sector is that it can be applied to the not-for-profit sector, but absolutely, the not the NFP sector needs to step up and go, yeah, we'd like some of that, please, and invest their time in supporting that piece.
Yeah.
And when we talk about, obviously, there's this huge amount of development. Are there any other things on the horizon that are particularly exciting for you and your team?
I think the biggest thing is this change to model. When you have disruptive change to a model, which we're doing, and it isn't just about, we talked about all these different ways of granting wishes, but we also want to make it possible for more people to help us to do this in a volunteering capacity. So all of our wishes, they start with a conversation between a volunteer and a wish child. So we've built out tech that allows us to support those interactions. So if it's a wish discovery or it's building wish anticipation. So we have a group of children going to Lapland this Christmas. And last week we had a wish anticipation session where our lovely volunteers were the elves, and they were writing letters to the children they all went home covered in glitter and sparkly and packing up these packs that were going out to build that anticipation on the run into the wish with hats and scarves and gloves and build those memories before they've even left the country. So things like that are all enabled by technology, and we know that the more that we can open up these opportunities to volunteers, the more that they can bring their networks in to support, and then we are able to grant more wishes. So I think for the finance team, it's really trying to navigate through that automatic. It's really easy to say no, isn't it? Someone says, can I spend money? Can I do? And you're like, no. My immediate response is, that sounds really hard. So we've got to learn to partner better with volunteers to actually give them more autonomy within guardrails. How do we do that? And really think about everything that we're doing and how we're enablers always, because we are subject to audit. We're always going to have those guardrails in place, but I think what's so important for finance is that you remain the enabling critical friend of the organization. You never tip into that kind of policing, very stop start, because otherwise you can't have both. You've got to really trust your whoever it is that's got and is empowered to do that particular bit of activity or the wish journey or the budget holder, whatever it happens to be, and help them. That's the difference. And it's those partnerships, I think, that we will continue to focus on, because whenever you change a model, there's always a bit of fear, isn't there? There's change management. What will that look like? And be prepared to change our thinking. Some of the things we've done traditionally ourselves, maybe the data scientists are better placed. Maybe a volunteer community leader is better placed to make those decisions because they have the context that we don't.
And I think that's a really good insight, because I often find it very interesting. Now, I've been obviously lucky enough to work across lots of different finance teams in lots of different organizations across lots of different industries. But it is really interesting to understand an organization's philosophy. In some organizations, I see that finance is the command and control center where everything goes through finance regardless. And it's like this sort of, like you say, hard stop, the yes, no piece, with normally a lean on no, but that's a different conversation. Um, but I've also seen what you're talking about, Sarah, where finance is enabling and supporting the wider organization to make decisions and to come with them when they can't make a decision versus coming to them with everything. And for me, that's when you start to get this amazing shift in an organization, when you're financially enabling department managers or budget holders or wish granters to do that. Then all of a sudden the entire organization is thinking through a finance lens, but doing it in a way that doesn't require finance even sometimes to be involved, which is amazing, because then you can focus on the things that do make a difference.
Totally. And that facilitation, you've got one outcome, which is to grant the wishes both now and into the future. So we do have that longevity piece. But you've got to really give up control. So if someone, and I still get it, people come to, can I spend? Well, I don't know. Can you spend? Do you have the budget? Do you have the autonomy? What are your figures looking like? And it's really helping. And if someone's really stuck, because sometimes people will come to you and sort of say, oh, I don't know. Well, it's your role to help them with their thinking, not tell them what to do, because that's your opinion actually from a wish granting perspective, the wish granters know what it is they need to do. They're probably coming to ask about one very, very small piece of information. And I think that's the only piece of advice I would give, is be mindful that our bias makes us think that we can answer everything. We've got an answer for everything, and we can do that. But actually, is that the best decision for the organisation? And should we?
And there is something, as we talk about this, you do wonder whether we should be getting coaching qualifications for our business partners to help them change the way they interact almost with
Yeah.
that finance decision, that budget holder.
I think so. And I think it's coaching, but it's also getting really comfortable with ambiguity. Because as finance people, we don't like that.
No.
Is it this? Is it this? Tell me, because I want a definitive answer. And sometimes the answer is we don't know. So how do we translate that ambiguity into things that keep the organisation safe and secure, whether that's through provisions or looking at working in a different way? But you've got to regularly review those. So I think the quarterly cycles help with that. But it's also managing our own fear factors and what can feel like a loss of control, when the reality is that the control was never there in the first place. You just thought it was.
Yeah, assumed control versus
Assumed
actual
control.
control.
That's a good yes.
Oh, well, as always, Sarah, I genuinely love our conversations, but at some point we have to draw it to close because you have some wishes to go off and grant. So, talking about obviously your organisation, Make a Wish Foundation, what's your biggest challenge? Is it meeting the wishes, or is it finding or getting in front of those that need access to wishes? What do you find is the biggest challenge?
So we know that with unlimited resource, we could get in front, partner with organisations that would be able to bring children into that wish pipeline. The truth is, at the moment, Hannah, we can't. We don't have the resources to do that. And so we have to be really careful that we don't keep a child waiting for a long period of time. So the biggest challenge for us is finding donors who are happy to support us, who are passionate about our work on a regular basis, to find corporate organisations who we can come alongside, who are happy to support us, perhaps in a charity of the year way, or even we've been doing a lot of partnerships with, for example, Technology Pro Bono, which takes that cost base out of infrastructure. Volunteering is another way that people can support getting involved with the wishes, but it really is all about resource generation, because if we can generate that, whether through cash or gifts in kind, we can grant so many more wishes.
And so that's a shout out. So for once, guys, I'm not going to ask you for feedback on this podcast, but I'm going to ask you to have a really good think to see if there is a way that you can support Sarah and the team at the Make a Wish Foundation to maybe just grant one wish. Have a look at that list on the website. We'll pop the link to that in the show notes. Perhaps consider whether you could do something different for Christmas to help raise money for the Make a Wish Foundation. And I want to, and think about whether that's something you could do on an ongoing basis as well. So thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your stories of Leo, and also your finance transformation journey with us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Hannah and team, for making Christmas time really special for our wish children and families, and for all your listeners that are going to enable many more wishes to be granted and many more memories to be made. Just a huge thank you from all of us.
And and it's an absolute pleasure. So, and I want to say thank you, Sarah, and thank you to all of our listeners for listening, for being part of the show, and for contributing to raising the awareness of the Make a Wish Foundation.